Welcome to episode 2 of the College Max. In episode 2, we're joined by Max Feber. Max is an entrepreneur best known for founding BRUW, a company specializing in cold brew coffee filtration systems. He developed the concept for BRUW during his high school years and later pursued his education at Babson College. In 2019, while in college, he appeared on Shark Tank, where he secured an investment from Mark Cuban, and later in May of 2020, BRUW was acquired. All right, Max Feber, welcome to episode 2 of the College Max.
Thanks, Noah. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we are excited to hear from you. And Max, let's just start from the start. When were you first? When did you get that itch for entrepreneurship? When did that start?
So I've been entrepreneurial my entire life. When I was a kid, I used to I used to make bar mitzvah montages. I sold snow cones at the neighborhood block party. I built a photo booth and kind of ran it in my neighborhood carnival. Was constantly doing things and always knew that I wanted to be entrepreneurial and to pursue something entrepreneurial professionally. So when I was in high school, I was really kind of itching for what was next. I didn't know what my next stop would be. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to pursue something entrepreneurial. Simultaneously, I happened to be falling in love with coffee and really excited about coffee and really energized about cold brew. And one day I tried to make cold brew coffee at home. I was reading a lot about it. Everyone promised that it was going to be this new and innovative type of cold coffee. In 2014, cold brew was not in Starbucks. It was not in Dunkin'. It was not at any major coffee retailer. And I knew that it was going to be the next trend. And I really spent a lot of time kind of figuring out how to make it myself and what the best way to build a cold brew coffee company was. And eventually I had a prototype that I had come up with, and the company for BRUW was born.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how old were you when, first when you just started with your earlier entrepreneurial, endeavors before BRUW, and then how old were you when you started BRUW and really got it going?
So the earliest company I probably started was 7 years old, when I was selling snow cones. And I got a snow cone machine for my birthday. And I was at the block party in the neighborhood just selling snow cones, handing them out to all the neighbors. And I loved it. I loved the hustle of selling things. I loved making things for people. And ever since then, I've been entrepreneurial and haven't looked back.
Love that. So, you're getting started. You're still in high school when you're founding BRUW. How does this work? Are you working with other people? Have you told your parents what you're doing?
So when I was in high school, it started as a school project. So I always had this idea in the back of my mind. I wasn't doing much with it. And in this class, I was actually assigned a prototype. So one of the things I had to do was go home and build a prototype and turn it into class for credit. So that's what I did. I went home and I started brainstorming different ways to make the product and different materials to use, and ended up building the BRUW prototype and using that to turn in as the assignment for the school project, as the prototype. And so at this point, my parents were helping me a little bit because I had my dad in the kitchen with me who was helping me come up with some ideas and brainstorm different ways to build it. And it was really fun and exciting. And I was a sophomore in high school when this was going on. Wow. And was really just excited about building a company and doing something fun and entrepreneurial. And we'll get there. And like you said, I continued this company over 5 years, all the way through undergrad, up until my junior year of college, where in the May of 2020, I was fortunate enough to sell the company to another brand.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. And an entrepreneurial journey starting far earlier than others. So what were the early days of BRUW like? How did you go from idea to, you have this prototype and it's kind of working to, developing it into the business that it would eventually become?
So once I had the prototype built and I had this kind of rough idea of the product, I had to do a lot of trial and error to actually get it right, get it working to a place where I was comfortable to use it. After a lot of that, tons and tons and tons of iterations, I had come up with the prototype for BRUW, which was the double-sided cold brew coffee filter, this great way to make cold brew at home. And the next thing I did was file for a provisional utility patent. So I wanted to protect my intellectual property, make sure that nobody else could steal the idea, nobody else could run with it. And I filed for that provisional patent, and then I could really start telling people about it. Because before you do that, you're not supposed to publicize the idea. I had some prototypes made. I made a video, made a lot of content, and created a Kickstarter campaign. So had the goal of raising $10,000 in 30 days, posted that on Kickstarter, and was really fortunate to be able to actually hit that goal and use it um, to fund some of the manufacturing. But I'll tell you a story actually about when I was in high school. So right, I needed the seed money for this Kickstarter campaign, and I happened to be in a class at the time, which was a news writing class. And what we did was, we were learning how to write press releases and kind of write stories. And I convinced my teacher to let me write the press release about my own company. And so what I did is I wrote a press release about Max Feber. Max Feber is a high school entrepreneur. He goes to the school, wrote about the whole company. And I found a website that allowed you to send that press release out to a handful of different news agencies. And they would take that and actually use it for their own promotion. And I sent that out. It was like $20 to send it to 100 companies. Didn't really know what would come of it. Didn't have high expectations, but sent it out. Long story short, I'm in school the next day and I get paged to the principal's office. Don't know why. It doesn't happen to me a lot. I go to the front desk and the woman who is the receptionist, she says, Max, somebody's calling and asking for you. I don't know what to do. I said, what do you mean somebody's calling and asking for me? I'm a student. I'm 15. Like I go here. What do you mean I have a call? And she's like, exactly. Like I can't let you talk to him. I can't give you the phone, but I can give him your cell phone number if that's something that you're okay with. And I said, totally fine. Like give him my cell phone number. And what had happened is I had written this press release and forgot to include my personal contact information in the document. I had included where I went to school, and so that's what they did to call me. But he called me. He says, Max, we love your story. We're going to be at your school in 30 minutes to interview you. And I mean, it's a Wednesday. It's crazy. I'm not ready to be interviewed. I've never done that before. I've never been on TV before. So I call my mom. I say, Mom, you have to come here. You have to bring the prototype. I need it for this episode. And I need you to bring me a change of clothes, please. I'm going to be on TV in 30 minutes. And she's like, what the hell? Like, what do you mean you're going to be on TV? But, okay, fine. I'm on my way. They're filming the segment, and I'm in the lobby of my high school, like, holding up the prototype and doing this whole speech. And my friends are walking past me going, like, what the hell is going on? Who is, like, what are you doing? Like, it was a high school project. Like, why is he going to be on the news? Why is he doing this in the middle of school day? No one knew if I was actually allowed to do it. And it was kind of this really great way. But fortunately, I was on the news. I got a lot of local press around my reputation as a student entrepreneur. And I was able to get $10,000 raised in 30 days to use for the initial manufacturing of the product.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. I definitely brings me back to like stories that I have of similar-ish, stuff happening with news calling the school. And so you're 15 there. You can't even drive home to get your prototype. Your mom has to drive and bring it to school, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was really crazy.
That's awesome. So you have the Kickstarter raised. You're you're starting. You're building some momentum. You're still 15. What is the next step?
So after that, I had the money raised, and we knew we wanted to turn it in from a prototype into finished manufactured goods. And quickly learned that spending the money can often be just as hard as actually raising the money in the first place. Because I had to go to a handful of different manufacturers, 3 different ones. A couple stole from us. A couple gave defective inventory. Got a crash course in conflict management and really learned it. But eventually found a small scale manufacturer who was also early and also starting up and agreed to work with me. And we became partners then for the next several years manufacturing the products. And I learned that just as you'll get opportunities for being an entrepreneur as you were, as I did when I wrote the press, there are also many scenarios in which people are willing to take advantage of you, as is the case with some of the manufacturers that weren't exactly acting appropriately. And so that was just something that I learned. And I was fortunate to learn that lesson early, but it's something to keep in mind for anyone who's a student entrepreneur.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's great advice. So, you're building it, you found a manufacturer, you're still in high school, maybe you have your driver's license by this point. Where does it go from now? And are, kind of hints of Shark Tank starting to creep in? Are you starting to think about applying for the show?
So I have some ideas. So at this point, I'm my senior year of high school. I'm about to go to college, and I'll fast forward a little bit. But I actually ended up on a TV show called Hatched, which was this very small local channel, local show that not a lot of people watched, and I kind of be skeptical that anybody's heard of it. But I had the opportunity on this show to pitch in a Shark Tank style to a panel of folks, one of which was actually M13 investors who, Courtney and Carter Ream, who are the brothers. They had these really successful early VC investments. One of them is now married to Paris Hilton, which is ridiculous that I kind of pitched to him in 2015 on a TV show that no one's ever heard of. And ended up getting a deal with the Home Shopping Network. And so I ended up on a show, on HSN, show exactly like you'd expect, holding up the product and showing it and pitching it, kind of like same thing as QVC, and was really excited about being on TV. I found that it was really energizing for me, and I loved it, and I really enjoyed it. And so that's when I started thinking about potentially applying to Shark Tank. So right now I'm a freshman in college, and I was just on TV. I had this really amazing experience on the Home Shopping Network. I was just, I was on Hatched. I was on this other really great show. The company is growing and scaling, and I'm sitting back and saying, what's next? I have these amazing big breaks and these amazing opportunities. Like, what am I going to do next? And that's when I sent the Shark Tank application in.
So how does that work? You apply for Shark Tank, do you hear back? What is the audition process like to actually going out and getting to film?
It's a crazy process. You apply to Shark Tank, and you don't really hear much. And then 2 weeks later, most people just kind of just send the application in and nothing happens. I sent the application in, and then 2 weeks later, I got a call saying, Max, you're kind of interesting. We want to learn a little bit more about you. We're not sure you're a fit, but let's keep this conversation going. And I said, all right, sounds good. Let's have that conversation. Talk to them, and the same thing kept happening. Every 2 weeks, I would get a call. They would want to reach. They would want to talk to me. They would want to learn more. And it would, kind of on and on it would go. And eventually, this conversation led to them saying, Max, we want you to come to LA. No guarantee you're going to be on Shark Tank. No guarantee you're even going to film, but we want you to come. And if you're going to be on Shark Tank, this is when it would be. And packed my bags, built a set, got really everything I needed in order to be on the show, and went to LA with kind of limited information, and was able to really just kind of show up there and start. We're ready to pitch to sharks. But something really unique that a lot of folks don't know, actually, is that approximately half of the people that go to LA and film don't make it to air. And so whether or not you get a deal, you could go, you could film, you get this great pitch, and just get cut and not make it to the show. And so you actually don't know if you're going to be on the show until a week or two before. And so I pitched, I got a deal with Mark, right? That's everyone knows. I mean, now everybody knows. I got a deal with Mark. I went home. This is June. And I'm like freaking out. I have no idea I don't know if I'm going to be on air. I'm working on closing the deal and doing due diligence. And we were lucky enough to close the deal with Mark Company. And, we don't know what's going to happen. And then finally in December, 6 months later, I get an email saying, Max, you're going to be on Shark Tank in 2 weeks, on January 6th, 2019. And that was kind of the first day we aired, and the rest is history.
So you're a freshman in college, right? Doing this?
Correct. Yes.
Freshman in college. Wow. So you're...
I actually think by the time we aired, so I applied my freshman year. By the time we aired, I was a sophomore. So it aired the kind of winter break of my sophomore year.
Gotcha. So you're early in college. You've been watching Shark Tank your entire life. What is it that, first preparing for Shark Tank, how do you do that? And then, what is it like being there with all the uncertainty around, will I even get to pitch? Will my pitch make it? What is that entire experience like?
I was lucky that, in every company is, but the actual preparation is not as challenging as you'd expect, because all of the numbers you should know anyways. Like every question that you see these entrepreneurs getting grilled with, we know. Like I know my revenue for the year. I know what our margins are. I know what our strategies are. Like we know what we want to do. The kind of, it looks a lot scarier than it is because you have a lot of that information. You just need to be good at verbalizing it and work on actually extracting those ideas from kind of back in your brain and explaining them to investors, which is a skill that anybody should have, no matter whether they're an entrepreneur or not. But the craziest thing is that you're standing on this like iconic set, and it's terrifying. It is so terrifying, and the sharks are sitting there, so very intimidating. And one of the really challenging pieces is that you actually walk in, and what they have you do so they can get an establishing shot is you walk down on the carpet and you stand there looking at the sharks. And you stand there kind of motionless, staring straight for about a minute. and they get the shots, and then they finally say, okay, begin, you can start. But for a minute, you're standing there just making eye contact with the sharks, and that was terrifying. Kind of just having my pitch memorized. And then finally they said start, and I was able to rattle it off and kind of close that deal down. And then after the fact, it was crazy. The next day I went home and I had this amazing deal with Mark. I was so proud of myself, and I couldn't tell anybody. And that was scary. But I think the next 6 months, where I was waiting to find out if we were going to be on the show or not, were the most stressful period of the entire company. They were more stressful than selling it. They were more stressful than any customer issue. They were I experienced more anxiety in those 6 months than at any other period of the company. And, finally, the day we aired, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief and let go and kind of no longer think about that.
Interesting. So, yeah, you go on, you have the success, and it finally airs. And it airs while you're at college. What was that like for you? What was, what was the night that it aired? Were you seeing just a ton of inbound coming in? How did that work?
Yeah, we did more revenue the 2 days that we aired than the 2 years prior combined. So we blew it out of the water. And what we actually found is that, so we aired January 6th, January 7th, which would be called, the next day, we had thousands and thousands and thousands of abandoned carts. And so if you're not familiar, an abandoned cart is, somebody comes to your website, they add something to the cart, they add their information, and they don't check out. You still capture that information. And we had a list of people and what they added to the cart and their name, their phone number, their email, and all this stuff. And so we slowly started responding to them on these automated messages, these kind of automated flows. And I realized very quickly that the number one most important thing that we had to do that day was closing those abandoned carts. If we could close those abandoned carts, we would increase our revenue. It was the only priority we had that day. And so we started picking up the phone and cold calling. And I got my friends involved, and I just said, call people. Just pick up the phone and call people. And said, and I was on the phone saying, hi, my name is Max. Nice to meet you. I saw you added a product to your cart. I'd love to help you check out. And, and it was going great. So I want you to keep in mind, a benchmark close rate is at the time, was about 3 to 5% to close abandoned carts. That's what we aimed for. So we quickly ran into this problem where, everyone experienced it. If you pick up the phone and call somebody, it's an unknown number, nobody answers it. People just kind of send it right to voicemail. So what we also learned is that as skeptical as people are to answer an unknown caller, they're incredibly likely to answer an unknown FaceTime. And so what we were doing, which I would not recommend, is literally picking up the phone, putting people's phone numbers into FaceTime, and cold FaceTiming them. And so we were cold FaceTiming customers. They would answer, and they'd be like, hello, who is this? They'd leave a number, and I would say, hi, I'm Max. You saw me on TV yesterday. You added a product to your cart. You didn't check out. Why not? How can I help you? And they were just like, what the fuck? Why are you calling me? You should not be calling me. Like, I'll buy it right now. So, again, I don't recommend it, but that 3 to 5% benchmark close rate for abandoned carts, we had all the way up to 80%, 80% we were closing. And we called every single person, we talked to every single one, and we were really fortunate to be able to do more revenue the day after we aired than the day we did. And the last I checked, we were one of the only companies in the history of the Mark Cuban portfolio to do more revenue day after airing than the day of, which was exciting.
Wow. So you have this crazy jump the day of, the day after. At this point, how big is the team? How are you, running this business while still in college?
So this, look, this team was myself. I had somebody who helped me in marketing. I had somebody help me in customer service, and I had somebody help me with admin. It was lean, and I was doing a lot of the work. And obviously, I wasn't shipping orders myself. We had that outsourced. But at this point, we're really kind of grinding to get things made and to get everything done. And as a full-time student at Babson, I had a pretty rigorous course load also. And it was always important to me that I finish my degree and I graduate and I not drop out. It was not something that I would consider. And it was tough, but it takes a lot of prioritization and a lot of kind of adequate time management. And what that means is that sometimes, you're not going to be going out on a Thursday night. You're going to be sitting at your desk and you're going to be working. And that was a sacrifice I was always willing to make, is that I would be in my dorm working. I would be in my apartment working. I mean, you can ask any of my friends that were friends with me during college. I was working the whole time, building a company and scaling it. And, I had a social life. I had a great time in college. I really loved it, but it certainly was something that I prioritized over going out and over other stuff. And it's just, it really comes down to like how important it is to you to grow your company. Do you want a side hustle and something small and casual that you can do while you're a student, or do you want to build a company? And if you want to build a company, you have to work like you're running a company. And that's a lesson I learned and I kind of maintain to this day. And I still, I told everybody when they were a student. I will say, I'll add one other piece. The other side of it is that it's very important to let yourself recover. Because I had friends who, or peers in school, who they would start companies, and they would literally sit down at their desk at 8 in the morning, and they wouldn't get up until 2 a.m., and they would do the same thing every single day. And I told them, every single time, I said, you have to give yourself time to rest. You are going to burn out. You will not be able to sustain this. You're going to collapse. Like, you will literally not be able to manage. And they're all like, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, I had at this point been running a company 4 years, and I said, you have to let yourself recover. They didn't believe me. Every single one of their companies failed. The people who took my advice and they took breaks and they rested, their companies succeeded. With the exception of 2 remarkable entrepreneurs that did not take my advice, they worked absolute bonkers hours, and they've now built ridiculously large companies that a lot of people have probably heard of. But that was kind of always, that was cool to see.
So what does your college life look like after this airs on Shark Tank? Do have all your professors, have all of your friends seen? How does that affect things?
Yeah, so actually, something that was really funny is that I ended up on the homepage of the college's website because they were advertising me as a student who was on Shark Tank. I was on the front page of the website for a while. And every time I would go into a class, I would sit in a lecture, and the professor would open their computer to put on slides, and I would show up on the screen. Like, my face would be there smiling in front of the whole class. And so it was definitely funny to have that much attention. People would recognize me, people would come up to me and ask questions. It was a little strange, and it was always funny. I loved it. I always appreciated it, but it was kind of unique to have so much, it was unique to have that much attention on campus for what I was doing, and it was cool. I really liked it, and I was always willing to talk to people and give advice, and some people took it, some people didn't. Some people built much more successful companies than myself, so they made, whatever, but whether or not they took the advice didn't really matter, but it was cool. Like, I really loved the attention, and I think that it was really neat because I was on Shark Tank to get it. But I will mention that, like, there are a lot of folks that built really amazing companies that'll never be on Shark Tank, that never got that publicity. Nobody knows who they are, and they're building really amazing stuff. And so it's not necessarily something to strive for. It's not a goal. It was cool, and I'm glad it happened. I'm really grateful for it. It gave me a lot of opportunities, but it's not it was not an end-all be-all.
Gotcha. So yeah, that's again very very unique college experience for sure. So you got the deal with Mark. What does that look like after the fact, after Shark Tank has aired? You see all the huge spike in revenue coming in. Are you contacting him regularly? How does it go?
Yeah, so I worked with Mark and his team on a regular basis. I would send him weekly updates. I would send so I would send him weekly updates for general high-level business advice. And so if I had a strategic question, he would answer it. If I had an operational question, he would answer it. And then anything more technical, he actually staffed a team of experts. So if I had a marketing question, he had a full-time marketing expert that was helping me on staff. He had legal advisors and accounting advisors, all these people that were there to support. And so for anything that was really kind of meticulous and technical, he had somebody to answer the question, and then high-level business advice, he was there always. And he was a partner in the business. He was giving me a lot of feedback and advice, and was was a big cheerleader of mine at the time, which was amazing.
Has that relationship continued after BRUW? You moved on from BRUW?
I was really lucky when I sold the company that I did not have to keep managing it. Like, I was fortunate that I didn't have to keep running it. I could step back, I could take a break. And so, we were all done. And, I've kind of continuously been in touch with him and his team, more casually, but we haven't, kind of maintained any form of working relationship together.
Gotcha. Okay, so now you've gotten this huge spike from being on Shark Tank. The professors know about it, everyone knows about it. What is the next step for Brew, and how does it go from there to where you're eventually acquired?
So I was amazingly proud of the work that we did, and me and kind of all the marketing people and all the people on my team that worked with me. I got it out at this point. So it's now 2019. We're growing it over the course of the year, and I'm looking for what's next. And I start to kind of tease the idea of potentially being acquired and selling the company. And so I was kind of deciding whether or not it was something that I should be looking towards. And I had some conversations with a lot of people, a lot of strategic partners, a lot of people that were able to help. And I was lucky that in 2020 I met with Jenny Lynn Williams of SnarkyTea, who is a direct-to-consumer tea brand. And they were looking to break into iced tea and cold brew tea, and we were looking to expand in that region as well. And we started working together. And long story short, they ended up acquiring us and encompassing brew into their portfolio, which was really exciting. And so in May of 2020, I was able to step back, take a deep breath, and kind of look towards other things and stop working on the company, which was awesome.
So when it is acquired, how many years had that been at Brew? And what were you thinking about doing next?
I had only 5, so that was 5 years, and I had no idea. And that was part of the problem, is that like I sat back and I said, I don't know what to do next. I just got accomplished this huge thing. I got this amazing thing done. Like, what do I do next? And I think that's a question that I will perpetually answer the rest of my career. What do I do next? And I think a lot of us are going to always be asking and answering that. But knew I wanted to maintain my presence in the entrepreneurial world, and after working in a handful of startups, actually then went back to school to get an MBA at NYU Stern. And so I'm in the process of obtaining an MBA now to then use as my career continues to matriculate, and I keep progressing as I grow.
Now, looking back at this, kind of unique time in which you built the business while you were in high school and in college, what advice would you give to other, high school and college entrepreneurs with what you've learned from, doing it throughout your entire experience?
I'll say that, look, the number one piece of advice I will give you is that entrepreneurship is nonlinear. I just told this beautiful story of everything that I did from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And anyone who listens to podcasts or reads about entrepreneurship, they know it sounds like it's always chronological. In reality, that's not the case. Nothing feels like it's going to happen. There's a ton of setback, a million crazy turns. You don't know what's happening any one week from the next. Everything feels like it could collapse at any moment. You don't know what's happening. And then when you look back, it's really easy to paint this beautiful story and tell people what you did and how you got to where you are. But you can only do that in retrospect. It's very important that you're constantly forward-looking. The other piece that I'll say is that this is a mental game. Entrepreneurship is not a game of who can work the longest hours. It is not a game of who has the best idea. It is not a game of who's the smartest. It's purely a game of grit and intensity. And it is who can endure the process of entrepreneurship the longest will be the most successful. And that's my personal opinion. And with that said, it's a mental game. It's very important that you're committed mentally and you're locked in and you're focused on what you're building. And you always it's unique from any other type of work, because every other type of work is less mental. You can just do it mindlessly. You cannot mindlessly do entrepreneurship. You have to always be dialed in. And it's a piece of information that I wish I had been told when I was younger, and it's something that I will continuously take with me as I launch any other future company.
Definitely. No, that's really good advice. And I hope the people in college and high school are listening to that and can take that with them. So, again, what are you working on now? Where's your head at? And also, how closely do you follow BRUW and, what's still going on over there?
So I make an effort not to pay attention to what's going on at BRUW. I don't want to know what they're doing. I loved that company and I grew it and I was fortunate to sell it, and I didn't want to see what came next. As of now, I'm focused on finishing my degree, getting my MBA, and then kind of joining a couple other startups. But I'm also actively recruiting now and having some conversations with some other really neat startups about potentially joining their teams and helping build really exciting products. And so I look forward to updating you in a couple months and maybe even longer about what I end up doing next and kind of any other companies on the horizon.
Gotcha. Well, definitely super excited to hear about that. Max, thank you so much for joining this podcast. We really appreciate it. I think young entrepreneurs can learn so much from someone who did this when they were so young. So Max Feber, thanks again for joining episode 2 of the College Max.
Thank you so much, Noah. I appreciate it.